So, have you ever been in a conversation where you're in a conversation about religion or Christianity? Maybe it's a conversation about Jesus, and this person says to you, "You just got to believe." Maybe you've been there. Maybe it was when you were a kid, or maybe even when you were older. Maybe even recently, you were in a conversation and somebody just said to you, "You got to believe." You just have to believe. And you're thinking, but why? Why do I have to believe? Well, you just have to. Well, why? You just got to have faith, right? Maybe that's the phrase they used with you. You just gotta believe, or you just gotta have faith. And you're thinking, but why? Why do I need to believe? Why do I need to have faith? And besides, what does it mean to believe? What does it mean to have faith? Those are just terms and words we use, but what do they actually mean? And what you say, believe or faith, might be different than what I think that word means, and may be different than what they think that word means. And so, what does it mean to believe? What does it mean to have faith? And I've spoken to other people who say, yeah, I believe, but then their lifestyle, you think, really? You believe in what? Clearly, your understanding of belief might be different than my understanding of belief. But you're telling me that you have faith, you believe, but yet your lifestyle doesn't support the words that you're telling me, at least in terms of the way I understand the word belief, the way I understand the word faith. So, what does it mean? What does it mean to believe, and what does it mean to have faith? I want you to know right up front at the beginning of our church that you will hopefully never hear me say those words. That you'll never hear me say, you just have to believe. Because I don't think that's good. I don't think that's what Jesus taught. And as we're in this series, we're looking at the life of Jesus and trying to understand who he is and some of the things that he taught. I don't think he ever said, well, guys, you just got to believe. See, there was always a reason. There was always a reason for belief, at least in terms of the way Jesus saw it. And the reason for belief always hinged on who Jesus is. It always hinged on who Jesus is. And so that's what we're going to look at today. Last week we kind of started that, and we got a glimpse of who Jesus is when we saw that Jesus was the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. And that's kind of what we looked at last week. Today we're going to look at another aspect of who Jesus is. And today we're going to, in order to do that, we're going to look at something John wrote. Now, John was one of Jesus' closest followers. And he wrote an account of the life of Jesus and his interactions with Jesus. And so he has firsthand knowledge of the things that he wrote. And today what we're going to look at is Jesus' first miracle that we know of. As he kind of launches out into his public ministry of launching into letting people know who he is. And so John chapter 2, starting in verse 1, we read, "On the third day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee." Cana was a city, and it says Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. Now, as John is writing this, it says Jesus and his disciples were also invited. So John was there. John was present here at the story we're going to look at today as he's writing this. He was there. So this is firsthand knowledge. This isn't something he heard about. This isn't a story he heard. This is something that he actually saw. It says Jesus' mother was there, and it's separated there, and so she has some kind of role here at the wedding. And in weddings in those days, today, we get married and the ceremony lasts, maybe an hour, a little less if you're want things done a little quicker. And then you go and you have a party, right? And that's 2, 3, 4 hours or however long it takes you to have your party or whatever. And so it's all done, relatively in a short amount of time in a day. And well, weddings back then were longer. It lasted several days. And so they went on and on. And so they all of them were at the wedding. It says when the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him. Now, how many of you know that when the wine is gone, the party's over? Some of you have been to those parties. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." And so Jesus' mother has some kind of role here at the party. Maybe it's a relative, or maybe she's been hired to kind of help organize the festivities, or whatever the case may be. She's kind of in the know about what is going on, and she finds out that there's no more wine. And then she says this, "Woman, why," back up. So she says to Jesus, "They have no more wine." And so when she says to Jesus, "They have no more wine," this is his response. "Woman." Now, that kind of sounds, we wouldn't say it that way, right? Or your mama might let you know you said it wrong. He says, "Woman, why do you involve me?" But that's not really a great translation. It's more like "ma'am." It's not "mama." Okay, so I think he was trying to be respectful in this, but woman's probably not a great translation. More like "ma'am" or something like that. He says, "Why do you involve me?" Jesus replied, "My hour has not yet come." What an odd response. Why are you getting me involved? Now somehow Jesus' mother, Mary, somehow she knew that Jesus could do something about her problem. Somehow she just knew. Like she had, raised him and all of that, and she knew that she could take her problem to Jesus. Now, that's not what we're talking about today, but this is just going to be a freebie, right? If you have a problem, you can take it to Jesus. You can take it to Jesus. So that would be a good habit to get in. That's a freebie. That's not what we're talking about today, but she takes her problem to Jesus, and Jesus says, "Why are you involving me? My hour has not yet come." He's talking about the hour of his death. He says, "It's not time for me to die." Well, Jesus, why are you talking about that? Like, what's going on here? My hour has not yet come, but that's not what we're talking about. I'm just wanting you to fix the problem. Why are you talking about something that's going to happen later on? And so Jesus, what he's saying here is, my time has not yet come, but I'll give you a sign. I'm going to give you a little bit of understanding. If you're going to understand what's going on here, I'm going to give you a sign about who I am. And so he says this. His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now, this is another good habit to get into. So this is also another freebie. So you came on a great Sunday. All these freebies. Do whatever he tells you. Some of you know that you do what Jesus tells you to do, and your life is better. Some of you have stories where you did what Jesus told you to do, and things worked out much, much better than if you had not listened. And all of us would be better off if we just did what Jesus told us to do. Our lives would be better. We would be better at life. And this world would be a better place if we just did what Jesus told us do. So that's what Mary tells the servants. So again, it's as if she has this role here at the party, and the servants are ready to listen to her because that's just what they did. It says, do whatever he tells you to do, and then it goes on. Nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. Now, these big, huge stone water jars were used for ceremonial washing by the Jews. The Jews had these ceremonial washings because they were so concerned about being ceremonially clean. But back in their law, what we would call our Old Testament, they had these rituals that they would go through to be ceremonially clean. And so they would come and they would do certain washings and have certain things to go to before they could go to the temple and those kinds of things. And so it was just a way to remind them that they were sinners, and to come before God they needed. That was the ceremonial washings were dealing with and what they were all about. So that's what these stone jars were used for. They would go and fill them up with water and then have them at the house so that they could go through all these ceremonial washings to get ready for going to the temple and those kinds of things. So that's what they're for. And then it goes on. It says, Jesus said to the servants, fill the jars with water. So they filled them to the brim. Now, Jesus said, go fill them with water. So the servants did what Jesus asked them to do. That's connected to our freebies. They did, go back. Go back. Thanks. So they filled them to the brim. John wants us to know that the water jars were full. Okay? That means there was nothing else added in later. They were full. This, what Jesus is about to do, was a miracle. John wants us to know that it was all water at this point. Go ahead. Then he told them, now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet. He's like the master of the banquet. He's like the head waiter or maybe the wedding planner or whatever. He's kind of the guy in charge. They did so. And the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. Then he called the bridegroom aside and said, everyone brings out the choice wine first and then the cheaper wine, after the guests have had too much to drink. But you have saved the best till now. He said, normally what happens when you're at a party or at a wedding, you bring out the good stuff first, and then after people have had some to drink, then you bring out the stuff that's not quite as good, that costs a little less, or maybe it's a little watered down so it'll go further or whatever. But when the guy tastes it, he says, this is even better than the first. So what's going on here? What's going on? He says, you have saved the best till now. You see, there's something going on here. And what these stone jars that were filled with water represent, they represent the old. They represent, they're an icon of the old covenant. The covenant, the deal, the agreement that God had made with the nation of Israel. And he had all these laws and all these things that they had to go through, all these ceremonial washings that they needed to do, and all these rituals and all these traditions and all these things and laws that they needed to obey. That's what the stone jars represent. And when Jesus turns the water into wine, what he's saying is that is being replaced. The old ways of doing things are being replaced by something brand new. The old covenant is going away. There's going to be a new covenant. It's no longer going to be with the nation of Israel. It's going to be with individuals. You see, because when he turns the water into wine, the wine represents his blood that he is going to shed later on. And so when that happens, that's launching something brand new. That's launching a new way to relate to God based on what he's going to do for them. You see, the old covenant, the old way of doing things was going and sacrificing animals when sin happened. When you unintentionally sinned, one of the things that you needed to do was to go and offer a certain animal as a sacrifice that represented what Jesus was going to do in the future. That blood that animal shed didn't take away your sin, but it was a symbol of what was going to happen in the future. And Jesus says, the wine that replaced the water, the wine represents his blood that he's going to shed once and for all, so that there will no longer need to be any animal sacrifices. Jesus' sacrifice was sufficient once and for all. And based on what he was going to do, would inaugurate something brand new. No longer would it be the old way of dealing with God, of relating to him through the nation of Israel. It would be through what he would do on the cross. That he would be there, that he would die, that he would shed his blood, that he would be buried, that 3 days later he would rise again. That as we saw last week, was him being our substitute. That's what we deserve based on our sin. And we can relate to him by saying, God, I accept Jesus as my substitute. Take the place that I deserve. And so that's what Jesus is saying here. He said, but you have saved the best till now. God had saved the best till now. You see, the old covenant was good, but it wasn't the best. The old covenant was good. It had some good things. It helped Israel during that time. But it was for a time. And Jesus comes along and he says, okay, well, God is doing something brand new. And it's better. And it's the best. And he gave us for it. Then it says, what Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the signs. You see, John knew that this wasn't just a random act of kindness. This wasn't just Jesus helping his mama out. John knew that it was a sign of who Jesus was. The first of the signs through which he revealed his glory, through which he revealed who he was. And it says, and his disciples believed in him. There's our word, believe. They believed in him, not just because Jesus said, hey guys, believe in me. They believed in him because of what they saw. They believed in him because of what they saw. Jesus never asked them to believe just to believe. Jesus never asked them to believe because their mama believed, because they were Jewish. Jesus never asked any of that. He said, believe because of what you see. And what they saw was the first of many miracles. And they believed in him. This word believe means to believe. It means to think a certain way about something. It means to have faith. It means to put your trust in. And so what does that mean for us? What do we see Jesus? We can't see him do a miracle like that. We can't, And so what do? We can go on the eyewitness testimony of those who were there. We can't physically see these things for our eyes, but we can understand that John, as he's writing this story, you got to know, as he wrote the accounts of the life of Jesus, he was there. He was there when this miracle happened. He doesn't have to hear a story and think this might happen, or he doesn't have to make this up because he was there. Matthew, who was also one of Jesus' closest followers, he also wrote an account of the life of Jesus. Mark wrote an account of the life of Jesus. Now, Mark wasn't one of Jesus' closest followers, but Mark got his information from Peter. Peter was one of Jesus' closest followers, and so Peter gives his information to Mark so that Mark can write down an account of the life of Jesus. Luke, he wasn't an eyewitness, but he decided that he'd heard all these stories about Jesus, and as he'd heard all these stories, he kept hearing, well, that story there that you told me sounds very similar to the one you told me, and that sounds similar to the one you told me, and so Luke actually started investigating Jesus and all the things that he was hearing about Jesus, and he heard the same story over and over and over with enough consistency over and over and over. He said, I need to write these things down, and so he really investigated all that was going on. And so we have these 4 accounts of the life of Jesus. So we can't see them physically, but we can take their word for it, that what these things found. And for us, the invitation for you and for me is the same. We're invited to believe. We're invited to believe, not just because our mom believed or our dad believed, or not because we grew up in church or didn't grow up in church, but we're invited to believe based on the accounts of the eyewitnesses and the people who thoroughly investigated Jesus and his life. And so I want you to know here this morning that if you don't believe in Jesus, that's okay. We want you to know that you can belong here before you believe. You can belong here before you believe what we believe. You can belong here before you believe what we believe about Jesus. We want you to know that this is a safe place for you to come and investigate, for you to come and check him out, for you to come and get more information, for you to come and ask any question you want. No question is off limits. We want you to know that you can belong here before you ever believe what we believe. For some of you, it needs to go a bit further. And so I can tell you, I want to use this chair as a help today. You know, I can tell you that I believe this chair is going to hold me up. But when have I believed it? When is the point where I've proven that I believe it? When is the point that I've trusted the chair to hold me up? Is it while I'm still standing? Is it while I'm leaning on it? Is it while at what point have I put my trust in this chair? It's when I actually that would have been funny. This is your chair, so thanks for letting me borrow it. It's when I actually sit in the chair. That's when I believe it will hold me. That's when I've put my trust in the chair. That's when I have faith that the chair will hold me up. And that's the same thing with Jesus. We can say we believe, but we're here. We can say we have faith in Jesus. If our lifestyle doesn't support that, we're still standing. I can start following Jesus. I can start doing some of the things, but that's just me here. When I transfer my trust from me to him. When I accept the fact that he died in my place for my sin and completely surrender my life to him, I've transferred my trust to him. I have faith that his death and resurrection paid for my sins, that I might have my sins forgiven and be able to start a relationship with God that starts now and will last for eternity. That's when I've put my faith. That's when I've believed in him. And so this morning, I'm not sure where this lands with you. For some of you, I just want to invite you back next week because you don't necessarily believe what we believe about Jesus. And that's okay. We want you to know that we want to be a place where you can come and investigate and ask questions and learn. For others of you, you've heard about Jesus maybe for a long time. And you've believed from up here. You've always heard about Jesus. You've always thought that he's existed. You always heard about him dying on the cross and those kinds of things. And you've thought that that's true. But you've never transferred your trust. Some of you might be ready to do that today. Maybe God's been speaking to you while I've been talking. If you want to do that, you can do that here today. If you want to talk to me about it, I'll hang up here after. You can come talk to me. If you're new here and I haven't met you yet, feel free to come introduce yourself. I'd love to meet you, get to know you a little bit. But some of you might need to do that today. For others of you, this might be an encouragement that you've put your faith and trust in Jesus. And you're just coming back week after week after week, trying the best that you can to follow Jesus. So we want you to know that this is a place where you can do that too. Let's pray. Father, thank you for your Son. Thank you that you loved us so much that you sent him to die in our place. Father, thank you for the testimony from Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John that give us insight into who Jesus was and what he did. God, God, for those here who might not necessarily believe, God, that you would help them to belong while they're figuring out the belief part. God, for those who need to make that decision to transfer their trust, God, I pray that you would give them the insight to do that and then the courage to follow through with that. And for those who've done that, God, I pray that you would help us to follow you. Pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks again for coming, and we'll see you next week as we continue with our series, 90.